Welcome to Church Experience Online. We're so happy you joined us today. As you watch this teaching video, if you have any questions or need help getting connected, please don't hesitate to reach out by phone or email. Also, our website is the best place to go if you'd like to access helpful growth step resources, join a serving team, connect in a life group, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially by giving online. At the end of this teaching video, you'll hear one of our Church Experience Worship original songs, and we hope that gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you've learned. Thanks again for joining us at Church Experience Online.
Well, studying God, that's the work of theology and the heart of this particular teaching series. We began this teaching series with the idea of the incomprehensibility of God, that He's so great, He's beyond what we can even fathom. We've talked about how God is the more that we're all looking for. And last week specifically, we got into the omniscience of God, this theological term that means God is all-knowing. So He knows all things, and because God knows your future, because God knows what's coming next in your life, you can trust Him today. And so today we're going to continue on in the vein of that study of who God is. And I've titled today's message, The Less Discovered Power of Honor. The less discovered power of honor. And I think dishonor for us when it relates to God is what keeps us from seeing God's greatness. It's what keeps us from experiencing God in all of His fullness and His power in our lives. So I'm really excited about this message specifically today because I believe it holds the potential to unlock some new areas in your spiritual life and in your growth. Jeremiah chapter 32, in verse 27, it says, "I am the Lord, the God of all mankind." And then it asks a great question. Is there anything too hard for me? Is there anything too hard for God? And of course the answer is no, but I want to ask that question of you in your life. Is there anything in your life that's too hard for God? I know you come in carrying problems. I know you have burdens. I know you have questions, but is there anything that's too hard for God? And the answer is no. There's not anything too hard for God. And the theological term, another term that we have, we're talking about the study of God in this series, is that He's omnipotent. God's omnipotent, which means he's all-powerful, that He can do whatever He wants. His power is unlimited. He's powerful over the wind and over the water. He's powerful over life and death, over physics, over gravity. He's literally infinite, eternal, and unlimited in any way. And this first lesson in your teaching notes is this: God's limitless authority deserves unlimited honor. Unlimited honor. Why? Because when we honor God, because He's first, He's greatest, He's strongest, and so when we honor Him and we put Him at the top, then everything else can fall in order. In our lives, in the world, see, God is first, and when we place Him first and we honor Him first as the greatest, as what we call omnipotent, all-powerful, when we recognize Him as that in our life, it brings everything into order. And this is really what our hearts desire. We want this honor of God in our lives because the opposite of honor is dishonor, it's chaos. And so God's created an orderly world because He wants what's best for you. And the world is only in order when God is first, when He's greatest, when He's strongest, because He actually is. And so honor is really, in a sense, putting things in the right order. And so there's order where you work. There's order in the neighborhood that you live in. At least there should be, right? There's order in your family. And you might not feel that way at the family reunion, but there's order, right? There should be order in our lives. But I see an increasing problem in our culture of decreasing honor. And when God is smaller, then our problems seem bigger. They seem bigger. So the question for you that's in this text is anything too hard for God? Is God in his proper place in my life? That he's greater than everything in my life? Or am I putting other things, whether they be idols or problems, ahead of God? See, when you compare the challenges in your life to the strength of God, it brings incredible peace to you. It also brings amazing perspective because you see God in his proper place and then you put everything else in your life in his proper place. We're subject to, in our human bodies, things like gravity, the aging process, just the fragility of these bodies that we live in, these temporary homes we live in. But God is above, he's greater, he's stronger, he's almighty. And this is where we get the biblical idea of the fear of God, the reverence of who God is and his greatness. But we can sometimes forget honor in the sense of compared to who we are as limited beings and God's unlimitedness, we can forget this. And I think back sometimes now that I'm a parent, I'm a dad, and I'm thinking, man, I'm most fearful with my kids when it comes to the fact that I remember how I was when I was a kid. You know what I'm talking about? You remember how you used to think. You remember what you used to do. And I distinctly remember a time when I was younger standing on top of this high place, getting ready to jump to another place. And I'm like, I know I can do this. And all my friends were there like, dude, don't do that. You're going to fall. You will get seriously hurt. We were up super high. And I was like, no, I can do that. And I literally was about to run and jump. And I thought I could make it. And if I didn't land there, there was another little ledge I was going to kind of land on. And looking back on it now, I'm so thankful I listened to their advice. Because had I jumped, I wasn't thinking about what if my foot slipped last minute. I wasn't thinking about if I didn't make it, how much pain I would be in, right? I remember climbing like a 50, 80 foot high old abandoned mine in South Dakota at one point when I was really young. And I didn't plan on climbing it that day. It was just there were some friends and I started climbing up this rock face and I was in flip-flops. And I got about 3/4 of the way up and in my flip-flops, my feet started getting sweaty because I was up so high looking down at the boulders, realizing if I fell, it would be bad. And so I started to sweat it a little bit. And I look back on that time now, I'm like, that could have been the end of my life. Like, there's things that you do, especially when you're younger, that you don't realize your limitations. And we, as we go on in life, we start to understand our limitations a little bit more, but we're subject to things like, even simple things like gravity that we can't on our own overcome. We're subject to these bodies that are decaying and all these things, but God, he's above all that. And what pride does is pride can blind us to the fact that our authority, our power, our abilities are limited and God's are not. It can cause that huge gap between us to be minimized. So what honor does is it puts God back where he should be, in control of life, in control of our lives. And dishonor is a form of pride. And this gets us into all kinds of trouble in our life. A lot of the trouble in our life is because we're dishonoring God. We're wanting control. Ralph Moore said, when we want control, we're coveting God's position in our life. This is the root of sin. Lucifer tried to take God's position and he was thrown out of heaven. So how do we honor? How do we honor God? We honor him through worship, which we've just done publicly. We honor him through private worship, through acknowledging God, through obedience. We acknowledge God through how we live. But we also honor God by honoring others. We honor our leaders. We honor our parents. We honor our elders. We honor those who are stronger than us and those who are weaker than us. We honor those who serve us, and we honor those who we serve. So one of the ways that we honor God is we honor God by honoring others. Will those closest to you say that you're someone who honors others? Do you honor others? It's one of the ways that we honor people. And dads today, we want to especially honor you. It's Man Day. So we want to honor you today. You have an important role, and we honor you. I think we should especially honor dads because it's so much harder to be a dad these days than it used to be. I really think that for a number of reasons, but just let alone what it takes to be cool in your kids' eyes, right? I mean, back in the day, all you needed to do if you want to like dance, with your kids, you just need to learn how to raise the roof. I mean, that's not that hard, right? Now you got to floss. It's like, they didn't teach this in dad's school. The only kind of flossing we did was like taught by a dentist. Like that's like it takes so much more coordination to be cool now with kids. I mean, it's a big deal. So dads, we honor you so much. But in 1 Peter, where we've been in this series, we've been kind of studying about God from Peter because Peter walked with God. He was close to God. He knew a lot about God. And in 1 Peter chapter 2, we're told specifically to honor God by honoring others. In verse 13, where it says, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority, whether to the emperor as the supreme authority or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. Submit yourselves to the authority, the leaders in your life. Submit to them, serve them, honor them, and for the Lord's sake, we submit to human authority. So that could be a boss where you work. That could be a parent if you're in the home of your parents. It could look like a coach on a sports team or a teacher in a classroom. We honor those who are in leadership because we honor the Lord. There was one Christian speaker and pastor who told about a time he was speaking at a conference that former President George W. Bush and his wife Laura were actually going to speak at as well. And he said he was waiting for his time to speak, and George was going to show up later that day. President Bush was going to show up later that day, and everyone was waiting for him and Laura to come in. And he was sitting next to, this Christian speaker was sitting next to this guy that was not a fan of George W. Bush. In fact, he started going off on all the things he did not like about his policies. He did not like all these things about who he was, the decisions he made. And that was just like warm up. Like he was just laying it down, all the things he did not like about former President George W. Bush. And he's going on, and they're waiting for him to show up. And all of a sudden, the door to this room, he said, opened up, and a soldier walked in carrying the American flag. And Hail to the Chief started playing, and everybody stood to their feet and started clapping. And there was President George W. Bush walking in, holding the hands with his wife Laura, and they come into the room, and it's just this awesome moment, and everyone is cheering. He looks, this Christian speaker looks to his right, and he sees this man who cannot stand George W. Bush, and he has tears coming down his eyes, and he's clapping and smiling broadly. And he said in that moment, he wasn't a Democrat, and he wasn't a Republican. He was an American, and he was giving honor. If not to the man, at least to the office, he was showing honor. And everyone in the room was showing honor, and the room was electric, he said. Now, I think this story is specifically relevant in the culture that we live in today, as politics are such a hot topic and everybody has such strong opinions and such strong criticisms. So I think this is relevant. But if we can stop for a moment and move away from politics, all right, and let's move into your life. You thought that was uncomfortable. Let's move into your life, all right? Let's move into our daily lives. What about your boss? Do you show honor? He's a bad supervisor. She doesn't know what she's doing. Do you show honor? What about to your parents? Well, they don't. I do things different. Do you show honor? Anybody in authority and leadership in your life, do you show honor? Here, we're taught to honor God by honoring others because God created a world of order. And the opposite of that we don't want. The opposite of honoring is dishonoring, whether that's to God or human leaders, human authority. The opposite of that is chaos. And the Creator didn't want chaos in the world, so He created a world with order. It says this all over Scripture, how important this is to God. Romans chapter 13, verse 1, it says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. For there's no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. See, authority is ultimately from God, so we respect authority to honor God. And this word, submit yourselves to authorities, what that actually means is to yield to the power or authority of another. Ultimately, we're yielded to God. And because we're yielded to God, we can yield to others because He's first in our lives. And the lesson here in our notes is very important. I can submit to others because I'm surrendered to God. That's why I can submit to others, is because I'm surrendered to God. So I can do that because I've ultimately just surrendered to the one, and because I'm surrendered to Him and He asked me to, I submit to others. You know, the core of the gospel message in the Bible is that I was dead in my sin, I needed a Savior, and now I'm living a surrendered life in gratefulness for all that He's done. I'm submitted to God. And you may not respect your boss. You may not respect the actions of a parent in your life, but you can choose to honor and show honor by honoring God through honoring that person, at least through their position. Now, there's, of course, exceptions. You don't blindly follow someone who's abusing you, right? Or you distance yourself and you create healthy boundaries there. Someone who's asking you to sin, that's a completely different story. But oftentimes, the tension more exists in the fact that we're being asked to do things we don't want to do or we don't like to do. There's challenges there. Of course, you have to have boundaries and healthy communication and assertiveness. But let's come back to honor for a moment. Many of the problems in our lives when it comes to being under authority, especially from whether it's a teacher, a coach, a parent, it came from an experience where someone kept us from doing something we wanted to do, or they ruined an experience for us, or we had a bad experience with a leader, with authority, someone handling power. One of my favorite stories I shared with some of you before was when I was playing basketball in high school, and I had a coach that got really angry with our team. And he yelled at us in practice. He was screaming at us at this particular practice. So angry. Have you ever seen someone like their face just turns red? I mean, he was just hot. He took the basketball that he was holding while he was yelling at us. He kicked it, flew straight up in the air. And while he's still yelling at us, this basketball is still flying higher in the air. Eventually, of course, it turns around and comes right back down. Well, where do you think it went? It went straight back down where it came from and made impact with the back of his head, just like that. And all of us, we did that. We were like, oh, we started laughing. We didn't mean to dishonor him, but we did. And let's just say we ran a lot after that. Like the whole rest of the practice, just run. And you know, when we experience, and he was a good coach, but man, you've experienced leaders who used their authority in a way that made you feel uncomfortable, that they did something you didn't like, or they kept you from doing something that you wanted to do. I remember in one of the jobs I had when I was younger, I worked under a leader who was not a good leader. And I still remember some of the words that he said. It was bad. And I would never want anyone to be in that kind of a situation. But you might have experiences in your life where you can look back on and you say, well, I don't trust leaders, I don't trust authority, I have a hard time honoring because I've been dishonored. And that's a part of our human experience. But I would just say this, you're not responsible for that leader's role. That a leader's responsible to God. They're accountable to God for their actions. But you're responsible for your actions. You're responsible whether you choose to honor someone or dishonor them. See, some people are treated in a way where they didn't like something that happened and it was wrong. The boss, the supervisor, maybe a parent or teacher, they did something that we didn't like and it was wrong of them because they were unjust. And that's sad. And if that happened to you, I'm really sorry. But I've also found out in life as I've matured that a lot of the times that we have said things like, well, this boss or this person, they did something that was wrong. A lot of times you look back on it and maybe you're far enough along in life, you can look back and you can see now that they actually did something, whether you'll admit it or not, that was the right thing to do, but you just didn't like it. You didn't like what they did. You didn't like the decision. You didn't like the call, but you didn't have the authority to make the call. They did, and they did something different. And so what happens is people run from authority. And I heard someone say that whatever you run from, you'll eventually run into. And maybe some in the room are running from submitting themselves to authority because of a bad experience or because someone asked them to do something that they really didn't want to do. Now let's bring this back to our relationship with God, because this is so important. As we're studying who God is, God says, I am first. I'm omnipotent. I'm all powerful. So I am highest. Whether you'll surrender in this life or not, you'll see me in my glory one day. You'll understand I'm greatest. And he says, I want you to put me first, submit to my authority because I want what's best for you. And there's going to be times where I make a decision, God makes a decision, he wants you to do something that you don't feel like doing. And if you are not a person of honor, then what will happen is you will make the wrong decision, the one that seems like best in the short run, but that will actually short circuit your future because you have not honored God by saying, God, I'm surrendered and submitted to you. What you want, I will do. Your will be done. I trust you. You're greatest. But because God's omnipotent, because he's all powerful, he's trustworthy. We can trust that he will always handle his authority in a way that's in our best interest because he's trustworthy. But for those who live a life of dishonor, God's not freed up to bless you in the way that he wants to. And so the heart of this is I want you to grow in honor because as you honor God, he will honor you. He'll bless you. He'll pour into your life because you honor him. If you need a biblical story to take some time studying through this, study how King David, honored King Saul. King Saul was against David. His leader was against him. And some of you are like, I got that situation going on. I know somebody that I'm kind of under in some area of life, and they're against me. David had a leader that was against him, actually tried to kill him one time, threw a spear right at him. But David so many times in so many ways honored Saul. He honored him. And we don't have time to go into all the stories, but it's amazing. He honored him. And look what God eventually did in David's life. God took care of David. He honored him. See, God can bless you through a leader when you'll honor them. Whether they're honorable or not, God can still direct them to bless you through them, or he can bless you around them. But he's not freed up to bless you if you dishonor, because that's dishonoring to God. See, some develop honor issues because they've had something withheld in their lives. This last month, I was watching one of my kids hold a door like shut in our house. I'm like, what are they doing? And then I realized as the door kept moving back and forth that there was one of my other kids on the other side of the door trying to get into the room. And I kind of listened and I'm like, what's going on? And the kid on the inside holding the door was like, you can't come in here until you clean up your mess out there. I'm like, well, I kind of agree with that. I had to address it and say there's a different way to communicate and all that. You don't have to shut the door on them. But you know, when we experience that in life, someone keeps us from doing something we want to do, that creates this resistance in us and almost like a rebelliousness that can kind of surface. And really, that's at the heart of what sin is. It's rebelliousness against God. It's saying, God, you have a way, but I also have a way, and I want to choose my way, not your way. And it's a lack of honor, of not honoring God and authority and a chain of command saying, God, you're at the top, you're the greatest, and so what you want, Father, your will be done. And a mentor of mine, Pastor Kevin Myers, he's taught on this topic of spiritual maturity so much, it's just really impacted me. And he says, you know, that spiritual maturity happens inversely the way that physical maturity happens. Physical maturity, we had a guy in our church, a couple in our church that just had a baby this week, and it's so fun seeing the baby pictures and all that. And you know, that baby is physically dependent upon mom and dad completely, to feed it, to take care of it, to change the diaper, all that, completely dependent. As it grows in maturity, it will eventually become independent. You know, at 10 years old, there's a new level of independence than at 2 years old. At 30 years old, there should be a much greater level of independence than at, you know, age 10. Now, some of you might have like a 27-year-old living at home. You're like, I'm waiting for the day. Independence is going to come. No. But, you know, see, here's the thing. You know, we grow and we mature and we become more independent. Spiritually, it's the opposite. We start out spiritually independent. I do whatever I want to do. No one tells me what to do. I do it when I want to do it. I do it how I want to do it. This is my world. I'm on top. I do whatever I want. And then we start to grow spiritually. We surrender our lives to God. We, you know, God, I realize I'm not on top. You're on top. You're on the throne. I don't want to do just what I want to do, because when I did what I wanted to do, I got myself in a lot of trouble, and that was not a fulfilling life. That life was not an eternal life. That was not a joy-filled life, right? So I'm going to surrender and submit my life to you, God. You're first. I'm going to submit my life to you. I'm going to honor you because I can trust you, and my life's not going to be in order. It's going to be in chaos until you're first. And once I trust you, you tell me, well, to honor others. And so I'm going to honor others because I'm honoring you. And so I grow in dependence. I grow to trust God more. As I'm spiritually mature, I honor God more. I depend on him. God, I need you. You'll talk to people sometimes who are very spiritually mature, and they've been around a long time following God, and they'll say things like, man, I need God. You know, I'm dependent upon him. Like, I can't do it without God. And it just, when you're not a believer, you look at that and you're like, you'll hear people say, well, Christianity is a crutch, you know, just for the weak. And as you get into it and you study it more, you're like, no, it's for the strong. It's for people who have realized, man, there's no greater power to tap into than God's power and authority. I mean, he is, and the broad road leads to destruction. The easy way is do whatever you want, do what you feel like doing. The narrow, hard road is saying, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to die to myself. I mean, what did it take? What kind of strength? Talk about being a man on man day. What kind of strength did it take for Jesus? Although he had the power to destroy the entire Roman army in a moment, call down legions of angels. He took that punishment willingly for the very people who were killing him. And then while they were executing him in a very painful way, he prayed, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. That's a real man. That's real strength. And it takes honor, it takes strength to control authority, to control power, to honor authority. And that's what Jesus exemplified. He's our example. And the self-centeredness that's at the core of dishonor, it ruins our life. It ruins us, and it keeps God from pouring his blessing in. See, honor reveals your character and how submitted you are to God. That's really the lesson, isn't it? That honor reveals your character. It shows where you're at in your relationship with God, whether you honor or dishonor. It shows how submitted you are to God, because if you're not submitted to God, then why would you submit to others? 1 Peter, again, chapter 2, down in verse 16 this time, God's word says, live as free people. Okay, so Brandon, I can finally breathe in this message. Okay, I'm free. Okay, that's good, because I was feeling like you're saying I should just kind of, honor my boss and do everything that they say and honor my parents. I was feeling very controlled today, Brandon. I love to know that I'm free. That's awesome. Verse 16, thank God for my freedom. But hold on, wait, there's another part here that says, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as God's slaves. Now that's an analogy. Live as God's slaves. Verse 17, show proper respect to everyone. Love the family of believers. Fear God, respect, honor God, and then honor the emperor. Honor the emperor. This is interesting. God gave us freedom, he did. But he did not give us a reason to excuse ourselves right into dishonor. And have you ever used your freedom as a reason for dishonor, as an excuse when God doesn't excuse it? See, God's blessing won't be on your life when you dishonor others or when you dishonor God. So what needs to change in your life when it comes to honor? Have you been misplacing your honor from where it should really be on God, his omnipotence, his all-powerful God? Jennifer and I were so blessed to be able to go on a date night this last week, and we're heading down to Hyde Park to grab some tacos, driving through downtown Tampa on the way there. And I look out the window, and I see this guy on a motorized hoverboard, this one-wheel, self-balancing skateboard, and he was just cruising along. I actually turned the street to follow him like a stalker. I'm like, that's so awesome. I was mesmerized because I'm a boarder. I love board sports, all that, and I'm watching this guy just cruise along with no effort. I'm like, that's awesome. And I literally said, I go, that guy is living my dream. Well, you can see where this is going. My date here looks at me and she's like, really? So your wife is in the car with you on a date night, your wife of 16 years, and that guy is living your dream. It's like, I do a little you'll cover up for that one, babe. I'm so sorry. You're my dream. You're my dream girl. I had to recover from that. But sometimes we can unintentionally dishonor when we shift honor to where it shouldn't be, when we shift honor to other lesser things. And God says, you need to know that I am greatest so that you'll always give your greatest honor to me, that you'll give your real worship to me. And then because I'm God and you're honoring me, then you can submit to others and I can say, hey, listen, honor your authority. Trust that if you honor those in leadership, that you don't dishonor people, you'll honor your parents. In fact, in the 10 Commandments, God said, this is the one commandment that comes with a promise. Honor your mother and father so that it will go well with you and you can live a long life on earth. And God from childhood teaches us, says honor. Honor, it's a God-given thing. Now we know that there are all kinds of parents, leaders, people who are dishonorable and make decisions that are not right, that are not good. But what we can trust in God is that God is a fully trustworthy source. He is not only all-powerful, but he's all-wise and he's kind and at his core, he's love. So you can trust God. You might have trust issues with other humans, but you can fully trust God and you can trust his word. He's like the perfect father. He's like the perfect father, and he looks at us as like his young children, and he says, you can trust me in everything. Just follow me. And I just want to stop and say, guys, on Father's Day here, on Man Day, those of you who are fathers, listen, you know more than anybody that you're not perfect. And the world will beat you up over that, and you might beat yourself up over that. Man, I wish I could put more time with the kids. I'm busy providing for the family. Or I wish I had better control of my temper. Every once in a while I could lose my temper. I wish I was a little more patient. Or I wish I was more of this or that. And I just want to say a couple things to you. One, you're not perfect. Okay, we know that. But who is? And that's God's grace. But you're not a bad father. And I want to encourage you in this. Those of you who are really trying to honor God and you're Christian men and you're living for God, listen, like we need more of you. There's a lack of good dads in our world. A lot of dads are absent and you're not absent. You're there. A lot of dads are abusive and you're not abusive. You're there in the family and you're loving. And there's a lot of really bad dads and you're not that. And so I just want to encourage you, those of you who are really honoring God and what you're doing, take courage, take hope, because what you're doing is a very important role in not only in society, but in your home. In your home. It's a very important role. So we want to honor you, especially today. Well, we honor God by surrendering and submitting to and honoring those who are in authority. We honor God because Jesus set us the ultimate example. And I want to one more time come back to 1 Peter chapter 2. And this time I want to jump down to verse 23. It talks about Jesus when he was crucified, and it says that they hurled insults at him. Insult upon injury, right? He did not retaliate, though. He suffered, and he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He trusts his Father. He himself, Jesus, bore our sins in his body on the cross so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds, you have been healed. So Jesus expressed honor to the Father. Father, I trust you. Not my will be done, but your will be done, right? Remember his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane? Father, if there's any other way, but not my will be done, your will be done. Even when it was hard, he honored. And even others were dishonoring him, he didn't fight back. I mean, when's the last time someone kind of chewed you out or was in your face about something? Did you fight back? Did you throw unkind, cutting words back to them? Or did you kind of take it and walk away, put boundaries up? There's a lot of things you could do, but did you express character and honor in that moment? The question I really wanted to get at today, because I think it's the real test of our honor, it's in your notes. And the question is, do I diminish honor when difficulty increases? Do I diminish honor when difficulty increases? Because it will be difficult to show honor in a society that does not honor. But when it comes to a leader in your life, do you honor? When it comes to someone in your life who is not always making great decisions, can you still honor? And when life is hard, will you still honor God? When things are difficult, will you still worship? Will you still give? Will you still serve? Are you submitted and surrendered to God even when it's difficult, or do you just follow God on the good days? When the sun's shining, when you're getting what you want, when you're blessed. See, that's what a lot of people do, is they only honor when honor seems to benefit them. But with God, honor always comes out better for you in the end. So here it is. The summary of this, I think, is so important. Our leaders, even when they don't deserve it, we as Christians, we show honor. With God, when we don't feel like it, we show honor. With people, when we feel the pressure of life on us, we still express honor. The next time the heat is on in your life, will you show honor? Honor to God, who's omnipotent, is all-powerful. Will you honor him? And will you honor those in your life? We believe in our theology, we believe that God's always good, he's trustworthy, he's honorable, he's limitlessly powerful. So we can put our lives fully and firmly in his hands. And how we do that is we appreciate him, we worship him, we acknowledge his power in our lives, and we honor God by honoring others, because the lesson is that God honors those who honor him. Right on?
Thanks for joining us at Church Experience Online. Please don't forget to check out the website if you'd like to get more connected, learn more, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially. You're now going to hear a Church Experience Worship original song, and we hope this gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you learned today.
have the power of all, but you washed our feet. Though you were right to rule, became servant king, became servant king. In love you came here, laying down your glory. You were fighting for me, you were drawing us near, invited to your kingdom, living in your freedom. You came not to be served, but to lay down your life, our King of infinite worth, becoming finite. You lowered yourself to raise us to life. Oh, great servant King, be lifted high. You're calling us to be your hands and feet, serving the lost and least. Great servant King, oh great servant King. In love you came here, laying down your glory. You were fighting for me, you were drawing us near, invited to your kingdom, living in your freedom. You came not to be served, but to lay down your life, our King of infinite worth, becoming finite. You lowered yourself to raise us to life. Oh, great servant King, be lifted high. In love you came here, laying down your glory. You were fighting for me, you were drawing us near, invited to your kingdom, living in your freedom. In love you came here, laying down your glory.